Welcome to New Wave Global. I'm Rabia Mehmood. New Wave is an independent news site which looks at the world through a South Asian lens and relies heavily on your feedback and support. Please do subscribe, like, comment, and also engage with our work. As we are speaking, in Bangladesh, a people's uprising has succeeded in the ouster of PM Sheikh Hasina. But this came at a great cost, as at least 300 people died in the weeks-long crackdown by the government. What started as a students' movement against a discriminatory job quota became a nationwide resistance. To speak more about this, we are joined by senior photojournalist, artist, and activist Shahidul Alam and Sultan Mohammed Zakaria, co-founder of the Diaspora for Justice and a former researcher with Amnesty International. Mr. Shahidul Alam is in Bangladesh at the moment. Thank you for joining us, sir. Can you put the protesters' demand and this uprising into some kind of a context for us? Because people are assuming that what has happened is just because of the job quota issue, or it is just because of the recent election in which Sheikh Hasina won for the fourth time. This is her fourth since 2009. But how did this anti-job quota demonstration became a massive uprising that it led to this ouster?
The job quota protests actually happened much earlier. It was in 2008, it was in 2013, and again in 2018. In 2008 and 2013, it didn't get very far. In 2018, it became quite a major event. There were two big protests at that time, the road safety movement and the quota protest movement. In fact, I was reporting on these, and that was what led to me being arrested and tortured, and I spent 107 days in jail. That actually happened on this very day, 5th of August, 2018. So it's ironic that Sheikh Hasina leaves on this plane 6 years later after having imprisoned and tortured me then. But to get back to what you're talking about, I think the quota did begin the process, but that wasn't what it was about. I mean, certainly there was huge resentment in terms of the quota, but I think it was the tip of the iceberg. There was a litany of issues from corruption, the extrajudicial killings, the crossfires, the disappearances. In fact, tonight, my duck, the women, the mothers of the people who've been disappeared are holding a protest outside DGFI, wanting to know where those disappeared people are. So that problem remains. But as far as the quota itself is concerned, yeah, it was a rash decision. Eventually, Hasina took a rash decision and scrapped it, which also was irregular. Then, you know, what the Bangladesh government has essentially done is use the court as a bad cop. There is no independence of the judiciary. The judiciary does what the government tells it to do. So if it's an unpopular decision, then it's done through the court, and the government takes the credit of popular decisions. So Hasina had scrapped the quota for which she was going to get credit. And then when she needed to satisfy her party people, then she had the court take it away. And then it was the court's fault, nothing to do with her. The fact that they were able to reverse it so quickly when push came to shove demonstrates how much within her control the court was. But the point remains, it began with the quota thing, but it didn't end there. And I think it could have been managed very easily by Hasina, because she actually conceded to the things they'd asked for. And had she done it at the right time, in the right way, it wouldn't have mattered. The fact that she was sneering at the students, the fact that they killed 6 people on the first day of protests, the fact that when they tried to bury these people, they were further attacked, just inflamed the whole thing and took it way out of proportion. So once that was there, then they wanted her to apologize. She was not going to do that. That too might have solved the problem. And then they wanted her to be removed. And today and yesterday, the call was for her to be hanged. So I think she did well to leave.
Yes, the call was for her to be hanged, and the way people are celebrating on the ground, we are seeing some visuals coming out of the Dhaka and other places. So you've mentioned repression and of course your own arrest and then, further repression of other people, extrajudicial killing in like hundreds, previous repression of student protests as we saw, and disappearances, the censorship of the press, and draconian laws as well, the Digital Security Act and whatnot. But from the outside or from a distance, it appears that Hasina did well when it comes to economy. I'm not going into the details of it as we are not, economists or development experts, but people were also looking at Bangladesh as this model where the development model has worked. But despite all that, there were these massive grievances, like the youth were jobless. They had these demands specifically linked to the quota system and all. So why is it that none of that worked and the uprising became so strong? Because it looks like it was not just a sudden thing.
It wasn't a sudden thing. And the development cloud is a hoax. Quite apart from the figures being cooked, the bigger thing is Bangladesh has had the fastest growth of ultra-rich in the world. So on an average, obviously the GDP is done well and the figures are good, but people had their backs against the wall. The rising price of the things, the fact that the average family, certainly the working class family, struggles just to keep going. Yet you have the government and their cronies milking this country. So the real heroes of Bangladesh are migrant workers, our garment workers, our farmers in the field. They are the ones who brought prosperity to this land, and all of that money has been milked away and farmed off, siphoned off to foreign countries. And now, of course, most of these ministers have left. So there is that huge resentment that has been there, and that's been bottled up. The quota was a specific trigger, but I think that's all it was.
Okay, so what is next for the country? Do people have faith in the opposition party and the army? Is there a possibility that the Islamists would be back into power, considering that it was being said that they are also behind these protests? What do you think is going to happen? I understand it's too early to say at the moment as we're speaking, but what's your assessment?
No, this Islamist thing is also a hoax. It's what the government has been trying to tell. They were saying that the violence has been caused by them. In fact, the third party that they talk about is the Chhatra League, their own armed goons, which led to this violence. So, no, the Islamists have never really had, its Army League and the BNP have been the two major parties. The Jamaat, for instance, has never had double-figure votes in the history of Bangladesh. So that is not an issue. Bangladesh is a country of Muslims. People are God-fearing, they're religious, but they have not been religious as far as political parties are concerned. So that is not an issue. The military is an issue in the sense that the head of the military is a very close relative of Sheikh Hasina herself, and that this is the same military that turned its weapons on its own people until a few days ago. They were being cheered today, but I certainly do not think that we can relax. We need to ensure that the military gets the message that it is not the military that we're after, but we're after a democracy, and it needs to be people's rule. I think what has to happen is an end to the dynasty form of politics, an end to the undemocratic process. And while the Hasina government has been by far the worst we've ever had, the BNP government has not been very good either. They've rigged elections themselves. They've also done extrajudicial killings, and there's a lot of skeletons in its closet. So we need to be careful and ensure that it doesn't really revert to any one of those. Right now, however, our main task is to ensure that there is peace and stability, that there isn't violence in the streets. Today, I did see, there was the Bongo Bhavan and other places were being ransacked. There is anger, and sometimes this anger is difficult to contain. But I'm hoping that together, that is something we will be able to stop. And certainly we don't want minorities or anyone else to be there. We don't want retribution.
Mr. Shahidul Alam, thank you for joining us on such short notice. We know that you have to leave, so we'll let you go. And we will now turn to our second guest who has joined us from the US. I would like you to also speak to us about what kind of grievances did people have, because there is this idea in the rest of South Asia that it was, of course, us, the previous speaker has explained that the government could have managed what was happening, but they didn't. Why is it that they didn't? Is that because just too much of authoritarianism? And when it comes to the grievances of the youth, right, who have been jobless, who have all these demands, what exactly was happening on the ground, which was basically ignored by rest of the world, and people didn't know what was unfolding? Please.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to thank Rabia for inviting me to your show, and it's a pleasure being here. Few things that it's not a chronological order or an order of merit, but just I'm organizing this randomly rather. The first, I would like to see that the lack of opportunities in the country, especially you would not see many countries where young people are so excited and fighting for the public service jobs. So that also implies that the private sector could not offer much, and it also, like, the lack of investment in the private sector is an issue. So the first issue is that there is an underlying economic side of it, that people did not have enough opportunities for themselves.
Mm.
And that is directly related to the quota reform movement, because the quota reform movement is all about the reforming the public service recruitment system, despite the fact that only a very handful of people can be employed in a given year. That's number one, directly related to this. But I think also the major issues are, for years, the way Sheikh Hasina managed protest, and yeah, violence and heavy-handedly dealing with any dissents. Not only BNP, Jamaat, or any opposition parties, but we also witness since 2013-14, there are at least 3 major student-led protests. It's entirely political. There is no connection with politics or regime change, etc. Students protested in 2013-14. Students protested for safe road safety. They hit the street en masse, hundreds of thousands of students all over the country. They hit the street, and then what we witness is that despite Sheikh Hasina succumbed to their pressure at the end, but meanwhile Sheikh Hasina deployed or unleashed her student wing, Chhatra League, on the students. This completely defenseless students. They attacked them. They brutally they use all kinds of from guns to sticks to machete. So they brutally suppressed the student protest. That's the first incident. The second incident was in 2018, when the first quota reform movement came out. Students started protesting for reforming the quota in 2018. And then again, we saw the similar episode, the repeats of Chhatra League violence, the brutalization of protest handling. Right? And Sheikh Hasina literally unleashed Chhatra League. And Sheikh Hasina is the guardian of Chhatra League constitutionally. According to the election commission.
Can you also, sort of, for our viewers' sake, tell them what exactly is Chhatra League?
Yes. Okay, Chhatra League is actually, I call them a regime controlled pseudo paramilitia group, although they are not a paramilitia group, but they are a student wing of affiliated with the Sheikh Hasina regime, and Sheikh Hasina is the guardian of that organization. Their committees at the top are formed by them, formed by Sheikh Hasina, approved by Sheikh Hasina. They take orders from Sheikh Hasina what they need it to do. So these student groups are armed to teeth. They hold. I mean, even in this protest we saw, they exhibited all sorts of weapons, from small arms to automatic rifles, and they use them against the people. They shot them people indiscriminately using them. So in 2018, the Sheikh Hasina unleashed Chhatra League, and Chhatra League brutally suppressed the student protesters. So you see the memory that even though Sheikh Hasina conceded eventually to demands of students, both in 2013, 14 and 18, the memory of that, the way Sheikh Hasina treated them, the students, and brutally suppressed them, it was like it was like, I would say, it's like it reached to an inflection point. And when this time students were protesting peacefully for the quota reform movement, etc., in the wake of the High Court judgment. But then again, instead of listening to students' grievances, talking to them and resolving the issues amicably, Sheikh Hasina unleashed Chhatra League. And Chhatra League started beating, shooting the protest leaders, the protesters. The first casualty, until the first casualty on, I think, 15th evening or 16th July, the protest movement was completely peaceful. So after Sheikh Hasina unleashed Chhatra League once again, this is the third time in the last 10 years. I think, in my view, a lot of students thought that enough is enough. And then every decision Sheikh Hasina made thereafter, deploying more Chhatra League, attacking them, driving them out of the residential hall, and deploying the police, BGB, RAB, all of his power. I think that exacerbated the situation even more. They killed a lot of people. I mean, in the span of like 48 hours, they killed almost like 250 plus us people, which is unprecedented.
The figure at the moment is like almost 300, but are
No,
you
not
saying that this is
only
not the
three.
final?
No, I'm saying about the first brutal attack, violent attack, the first 48 hours of the attack, they killed almost like 250 plus people. That's also official figure. I mean, the newspapers documented this, but newspaper could not document all the deaths and injured because the government took the death registry from hospitals, barred hospital officials not to talk to press or disclose the casualty figures.
So you're saying that the past 3 weeks, the number is higher than what we know now?
A lot more. Some estimates, some rumors are more than 1,000 people dead, but I think the real figure would be, my estimation would be around 500 to 700. That's where it should lie.
Okay, so in another question, speaking of repression and targeting of students, there have been documented cases of enforced disappearances and then enforced disappearances which turned into extrajudicial killings, right?
Yes.
So at the moment, like Mr. Alam was saying, that the mothers of the disappeared are going to be protesting in Bangladesh. What about these disappeared? Who are they with? Like, where do they, now that the Awami League and Hasina's regime is not in control, where are these people? Where could they be? What does investigation say by rights activists and journalists?
Well, no one was able to ascertain where they are. I mean, some estimation is that at least some of the people have been killed and disposed of, and no one knows where they are. We also know from insider that some people may have been detained. The DGFI secret prison inside Dhaka cantonment. So we'll have to wait and see how we can weight these claims, and we can work with the military regime or the interim government to know the whereabouts of these people. I sense that majority of the people, or most of the people, have been disappeared, have been disappeared truly, and they were simply killed, and we don't know.
Do you think there's going to be some sort of a response from the interim government? Like they will have to be better than the last establishment and come forward with some of the, repressive sort of things which were done by Hasina's government, or is that too much to ask?
Well, it's too early to come to that conclusion, because the interim government is supposed to be the government of consensus. So after 5th of August, there is a new social contract, and you will hear a lot about rewriting of constitution, revision of constitution, and then referendum, and etc. So there is no
constitution.
Yes, so there is no interim government as such. Any government comes to govern now will have to be based on consensus among the stakeholders, and that loose agreement, we'll have to see how that plays out.
So who is representing the people? You have the opposition parties and the military, but who's representing the protesters?
So there are student bodies, 5-7 of them, who actually led the protests since the beginning, and many of them have been detained, tortured, and the regime took statements under duress and torture, and they are actually they are now released and they are united. I spoke to some of them, and I think they are the force that the Bangladesh will rely a lot on in the next few months or years. How the country,
please go ahead.
Yeah, how the country move forward. Of course, there are organized opposition forces. There are BNPs and Jamaat. But I think the overwhelming consensus around where Bangladesh is now must be led by these young people, because they led the movement. They have been able to mobilize millions of people to Dhaka street today. Imagine if there are not enough people on Dhaka street, Sheikh Hasina would still be around, would still inflict damages and casualties. But the number of people is so outnumbered, almost like some people say that almost 10 million people hit the street. And that's impossible number to deal with. So the military knew it, the police administration knew it. They just had to give up. How many people they have to kill? They would have killed, right? They cannot do it. Even if the police fired, maybe 100 people would have killed, but the millions people would have marched to Sheikh Hasina's place. So Sheikh Hasina made a wise decision that she flee the country. But with the disgrace and blood in her hand, and we should continue to chase her and to bring her to justice.
So who do the people trust? Do they trust the opposition parties, the students?
I think right at this moment there is a lack of, discussions about who people should trust or not trust, because everyone is now very jubilant, everyone enjoying, celebrating the day after Sheikh Hasina. I would put the trust question on the back burner, because this is a big question, and trust, you cannot have trust on an individual or a party overnight. Trust is something that people earned, and these students, through their bloods and tears, they earn people's respect. And this, whether this respect would translate into something like long-term trust that these people can govern, these people can be the catalyst of change, if not the change themselves. So that's where we are now, and I am optimistic that these young people would be the catalyst of change. They will keep organized, they will remain organized, they will keep pushing for the change, and if they can do it, they are the best hope that that Bangladesh can have right at this moment. If they are disorganized, if not, then it will be again another successful mass uprising hijacked by the elites.
Okay, so there's a possibility of that. Zakaria, thank you so much for speaking to us, and thank you to our viewers for watching. Khuda
Thank you.
Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.